Okay, so let's talk about Path of Exile 2 patch 0.5 Return of the Ancients. I know it's getting a lot of attention, but I don't really care if it's like good for people who play all weekend. I want to know if it's worth playing when you have maybe an hour a night. And my goal is that by the end of this video, I want to be able to give you a busy adult verdict. Play now, wait, or skip. Because that is the real question for a lot of us, right? Not is Path of Exile too deep? Of course it's deep. Not because, or does it have enough systems? It has enough systems to make you want to open a browser tab, a build guide, a calculator, and maybe even question whether gaming is still a hobby for you or if you've somehow accidentally enrolled in night school again. The question is simpler than that. If you have work, family, responsibilities, limited energy, and maybe one clean gaming window after everything else is handled, then does this patch really respect that time enough to be worth starting right now? And this matters because a bad 1 hour session hits different as an adult, right? If a streamer spends 3 hours experimenting, that can become content. If I spend 3 hours wandering around confused, that might be my only real gaming time for the week. So I'm not reviewing PoE2's patch like a hardcore player. I'm reviewing it like someone who still loves these really deep games, but can't afford to waste an entire night just trying to understand what changed. So first, what actually changed in point 0.5? I'm going to do this in kind of a plain English way. This update does really kind of three big pillars, maybe four if you consider the new ascendancies a giant pillar. First, it adds the new runes of Aldor League, right? That means that as you play through the areas, you'll find these remnants that let you craft items using runic recipes. You fight waves of enemies or materials and unlock new crafting options over time. The headline for a normal player is really this. There is a new progression layer built around crafting, runes, and a defensive mechanic called Runic Ward. Runic Ward is basically an extra survival layer that kicks in when you hit one life. This is kind of the simple version. Some out there, I'm sure, can make a 40-minute spreadsheet video about the perfect way to abuse it. But for us busy players, the important thing is that 0.5 adds a new way to build some additional defenses into the gear that did not exist before. Just be mindful that one thing that people don't really realize is it does reduce other defenses when you apply it to a piece of gear. So maybe pay attention to that piece so you don't hurt yourself. Second, the end game was heavily reworked. The Atlas is no longer just this giant vague board where you hope you're doing the right thing. It now has more fixed points of interest, more guided objective with league mechanic quest lines for each of the different kind of types of league mechanics, and then quest versions of pinnacle bosses you can access more directly. And I really want to highlight this pillar because I feel like this is a big deal for limited time players, because one of the worst feelings in the game was logging in and asking, what am I supposed to do tonight? And then the end game was complicated and it didn't seem like you had a good direction on where to go. I think this time around, it seems at least a little bit more willing to point you somewhere. And the third big pillar to me was the campaign getting a lot of replayability changes. So for those of us with busy lives, I'm sure we're all in the same boat that the campaign for PoE2 is quite extensive, quite long, and somewhat arduous depending on how you see it. And I know there gets to be a lot of comparisons with Diablo 4 and its ability to skip the campaign. I'm not going to harp on that here, but especially because GGG has made a pretty strong stance that they believe the campaign should be part of that experience and it's part of the process, and they're really stuck on that. So let's review it from the perspective of, is it delivering where it needs to deliver? And to cut it short, some areas were kind of shortened. Act 3 progression was rearranged to be smoother. The waterways were made less annoying. You have these little stone pallets you kind of stand on, pressure plates, if you will, instead of those levers you had to pull before that made you kind of sit there and watch the animation and waste time. And then monster density in the second half of the campaign was reduced, especially in the interludes and stuff. However, in actual play, that doesn't mean the campaign is suddenly shorter. It means the game seems to understand that asking people to rerun a long campaign every league is a real point of friction, which is good. But we'll talk more about that in a bit later in the video. So here's what I actually think matters if you're playing with what I would consider dad time or adult time. The biggest improvement is not just the new content. New content can actually be bad for us sometimes, us busy adults, if it just means more homework. And the real improvement is direction. And I would say that PoE2 with this latest patch seems more interested in giving you goals instead of just dropping you into a giant pile of systems and saying good luck. That matters because limited time players need that momentum. If I only have an hour, I need to know what the session is for. Am I pushing campaign progress? Am I just fixing resistances? Am I unlocking some new systems, finishing a quest line, getting to a new boss, etc.? When a game gives a clear next step, I can enjoy the grind. When it gives me 12 disconnected systems and no obvious priority, I spend the whole session managing anxiety instead of playing. So, from a busy adult perspective, the question is not, did they add a ton of stuff? The question is, did they make a ton of stuff easier to approach? And my answer is somewhat yes. The build guide helps a lot. If you follow a good build, the game gets dramatically less mentally expensive. You're not constantly second guessing every passive point and every skill gem and every item and every support choice. That frees your brain up for actual play. And the build guides we've been using have been great, but they all use this external browser, whatever system you like to use, whatever website you like to use. But with this patch, GGG really went kind of out of their way. They added a way for you to take a .build file from your favorite guide creators or guide websites and just load it straight into the game. And now it populates your atlas tree with the path visible for you. And it populates notes that the build creator would have put in for like what types of different stats you should have in different slots of your gear and all like your skills, everything, depending on how in depth the creator went, it can tell you all kinds of things. It's built to support all of it. The only caveat I would have for this is that a lot of us gamer dads are playing on consoles and this isn't supported on consoles yet. And I don't know why they made this a big selling feature in a lot of the trailers and a lot of the discussion, a lot of their advertisement on social media, but it's PC only and it didn't really say that. So I'm kind of disappointed them in at least that one aspect, but I do love the build guide in game. It is quite fantastic. However, it doesn't remove friction completely. PoE2 is still PoE2. It still has a lot of loot decisions, quest decisions, crafting, boss learning, passive tree, eventually a massive end game with a menu of possible directions. So 0.5 improves it, but it does not turn the game into a casual ARPG, which I think is a good thing because I think they're striking a pretty good balance right now, which I think is healthy for the game. And so I don't really want them to do a casual ARPG. I feel like we have Diablo 4 for that in this space. But I do want it to be deep, but I just don't want it to make me feel stupid for having a job, right? So now the campaign, we'll dive a little bit deeper into this. The campaign can still feel like a slog, if I'm honest. And for me, the biggest offenders are still Acts 3 and 4. There's a few reasons for that. I'll cover a couple. First, like by the time you're there, the novelty's kind of worn off. Like early campaign is exciting because everything feels new skills, new gear, new zones, new bosses, etc. But by Act 3, when you're playing 1 hour at a time, you may have several nights in already, and the game stops feeling more like a fresh start and starts feeling like a project. Second would be the zones. They can still feel mentally tiring. Even with smoother progression, there are areas where you're not just fighting, you're navigating, you're checking where to go, you're wondering if you missed something, you're backtracking, etc. You're trying to remember what your quest objective actually means. And that's fine when you're fresh, but it's less fine when you're playing after work and your brain is already half cooked. Third would be the difficulty curve can punish lazy play. And I don't mean lazy as like an insult. I mean normal adult lazy, the kind where you sit down at 9:30 at night, you want to relax, and the game says, actually, this boss has mechanics, your resistances are bad, and your build choices from 3 nights ago now have major consequences. This is the part of what makes PoE2 good, but it's also why the campaign can feel kind of heavy for us. Fourth, Acts 3 and 4 sit in this like awkward middle place where you're far enough to be invested, but not far enough to feel the endgame payoff. And that's dangerous for busy players because if the game asks for 6, 8, 10, or even more 1 hour sessions before the real promise opens up, some people are going to fall off. Not because the game's bad, it could actually be fantastic, but life interrupts that momentum. So, yes, the campaign is better than it was. But if you're returning or wondering whether the campaign magically became frictionless, no, it did not. It is still a serious campaign. It still asks for attention. And Acts 3 and 4 are still where I think a lot of limited time players are going to feel the weight. The systems are less overwhelming if you're using the build guide process. That's the honest answer. I know there's a part of me that wants to play every RPG completely blind, and I'm still 18 and have unlimited time to discover everything myself, but I don't. And if you're a busy adult, a build guide is not cheating. It is a time protection tool. A good build guide removes the worst part of PoE2 in my opinion, for us limited time players, decision fatigue. Instead of spending your whole session asking, did I ruin this character? You can focus on execution. You can focus on boss mechanics and learning what's happening in the game. You can work on your gear upgrades, etc. You can make real tangible progress. That said, the game can still overwhelm you in two places. The first is questing. Even if your build is solved, the campaign can still throw you into areas and objectives that feel like they take more mental tracking than you expected. Sometimes the hard part is not killing monsters, it's figuring out where the game wants you to go, what matters, and whether you're accidentally wasting time. And the second one is endgame. Point 0.5 made endgame more directed, but it also adds and expands a lot. With the Atlas progression, masters, league mechanics, boss quest lines, the new crafting systems, and the runes, and the tablet reworks, et cetera, it all competes for your attention. This is exciting if you want a forever game. It's a bit intimidating if you just want to clear for an hour of monster killing before you go to bed. So, my recommendation is simple: do not try to understand the whole game at once. Pick a build, pick just one goal for the night, ignore the systems that don't matter yet. This is the only way I think PoE2 works for busy adults long term. Not by becoming less deep, but by refusing to let every system demand all of your attention all of the time. So, what can you realistically accomplish with an hour a night in this game, especially during this patch? And here's what expectation I would set. If you're starting fresh and following a build guide, 1 hour is enough to make meaningful progress, but not enough to feel fast. In 1 hour, you might clear a few zones, beat a boss, fix a gear problem, or unlock a system, or move one step closer to that next act. But that is a good session, and you should feel good about that session. But if your expectation is, I'm going to blast through the campaign and reach endgame really quickly and understand the new systems, et cetera, you're going to feel behind almost immediately. The healthier approach is to treat each session like a small mission. Tonight, I'm going to fix my resistances. Tonight, I am learning this boss. Tonight, I am just going to get to the next waypoint. It sounds small, but for adult gaming, small wins matter. The danger is when you measure your night against the internet, because the internet will always make you feel slow. Someone is already in maps, already in a build guide update. They're making in-game builds instead of league starters. Someone already knows the best farming strategy or the next broken interaction, etc. You are not those people, and that is not your scoreboard. Your scoreboard is much simpler. Did I understand what I was doing tonight? Did I make progress? Did I enjoy myself? If the answer is yes, then PoE2 works with 1 hour a night, but only if you stop expecting 1 hour to feel like 8. So here's my verdict. If you're a busy adult, should you play PoE in their new Return to the Ancients 0.5 patch right now? Yes. Play now, but play it with rules. Do not play it like a streamer. Do not play it like someone who can read every patch note, test every skill, and farm all weekend. Play it like someone protecting a limited hobby. Use a build guide, load it into the game, set your one goal per session, and accept that the campaign is still going to feel long in places. Do not try to understand the entire end game before you're there. And most importantly, do not let the pace of the internet convince you that your progress does not count. For me, this patch is worth playing because it is still one of the few games that can make a 1 hour session feel meaningful and feel like I actually made valuable progress. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's not relaxing, and it's not always frictionless, but it's meaningful and fun. And that's what matters. So, especially for us busy adults, right? Because I do not need every game to be casual, I need deep games that respect the fact that my life is not built around them anymore. And while point 0.5 is not perfect, it is a better version of that in PoE2 than I think we have ever seen before. So if you're playing PoE with limited time, I want to know where the game is actually losing you. Is it the campaign, the build choices, the questing, or the end game systems? Or is it just the feeling that everyone else is already ahead? Drop that in the comments below because I want this channel to be about deep games from the perspective of people who still love them, but just simply cannot live their entire life inside them anymore. Thank you.